This is Selena Yvette, host of Stories from Planet Earth. Thanks for listening to the following show on Public House Media.
Everyone, welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're nerdy, and you probably are too. I'm Lindsay, and I'm here today with Elisabeth, and we are here to talk nerdy to you. So this week, we have decided to take a topic that was actually suggested by our former co-host, Emily, and talk about moments in our TV fandoms that really, caught us in the feels. But, the real memorable references to human life, I suppose is the best way to say it. Kind of like pulling at our heartstrings, pulling at our literary heartstrings, those kinds of things. First, of course, Elisabeth is going to start with Gaming Corner.
Yep. And I have kind of an interesting topic this week. I'm sure y'all saw my post on Monday talking about, being disingenuous in reviews and basically, ignoring or rewriting, different things in a review to boost up a game, especially when it doesn't need it. And I think that's a problem really across a whole lot of different areas, not just the most recent God of War. I actually just saw a video today that just, set me off because it's a very common thing that I see a lot, and that is in the most recent Arkham games, we had what we thought was a new character, the Arkham Knight, and nobody knew who he was before the game was released. And of course, turns out it was, spoilers, it was Jason Todd. And literally every single video I've seen about the game since, everybody has said, oh, well, it was so obvious it was Jason Todd. Everybody knew it was Jason Todd. It was just so obvious. And I'm just I want to point them back to the YouTube comments and the board discussions and all of the, talk that went on dated before the game was released and show them that no, we did not know it was Jason Todd. Jason Todd was one of the names that was thrown around, but he was one of several different people that people thought he could be. Jason was even one of the ones I thought the Arkham Knight could be, but I still was not 100% sure it was him. I was still holding out on it could be Hush, it could be Clayface, it could be somebody completely new and different. We didn't know, and I think it speaks to a certain arrogance that, oh yeah, we totally knew. It's no, you didn't. Show me a post that you made dated before the game was released, dated before anything about the game was, released other than trailers. Just show me that post that you made that said, oh yeah, it's totally 100% Jason Todd, no doubts about it. And then I'll believe you. But until then, I'm going to have to call y'all on that. You didn't know. Nobody really knew for sure. And it's just frustrating because I keep seeing it pop up and I'm like, why? Do we have to be so arrogant to admit that, yeah, we didn't know beforehand? Because it's one of those things where it's sprinkled into the narrative such that when you look back in the game after knowing for sure, then you see it's obvious because those breadcrumbs stick out. But as you're playing it and you don't know, those breadcrumbs don't really stick out. It's just extraneous detail that's in the background that, it doesn't have any significance until you know the significance. You know what I mean? So it's just frustrating. It's y'all, please, just stop. And
what I think is really interesting about that is the element of hindsight being 2020.
Exactly.
Sure, anybody can say that they knew that's who it was going to be, but it's always that element of well, yeah, of course I knew, but no one really ever did, especially with the speculations that are online and on Reddit and. Yeah,
there was so many different names that were bandied about, and that was without even taking into consideration that the Arkham Knight could just be somebody that was completely new that that the game company came up with. That's was also a totally viable option. So it's like, y'all, get off your high horse. You didn't know. Just admit it. And yeah, I see a lot of it also in like the Madden games because, I swear every year they go on and on about, oh, this stuff was added. And it's like, yeah, but this stuff was also taken away. And this is also a palette swap. And NFL 2K5 that was released 16 years ago actually did all of that better. And it's a PS2 game? Yeah, PS2. So, yeah, no. It's like a type of delusion. I don't know if people just have such short-term memory or what. Like, it's just so baffling to me that we can't just be honest with ourselves. Like, yeah, I admit I got took. Jason Todd was the Arkham Knight, and I thought it might be somebody else. Like, just be honest, okay? Y'all, let's do that. Let's do that. I'm proposing for 2020, we be honest with each other and with ourselves, as far as our speculation goes, as far as what we think, as far as like sort of our own headcanons as they relate to lore, for games that come out. I mean, I have several different like headcanons and things that I kind of think up and come up with for like Dragon Age 4, but if the game comes out and they're proven completely wrong, then I'll just be like, oh, well, guess I was wrong, It's not a big deal. It's really not a big deal to be wrong. It's okay.
I mean, that's kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about some fandom television shows. What I think is funny about this concept is that everything I could think of was in Doctor Who. Like references to like big old feels and big old things that we can all relate to. Mm-hmm. I feel like all those characters have always been so relatable, and we all know Adana. We all know, well, let's hope we all eventually know a Rory. So, what sticks out to you as far as like a Doctor Who moment?
Well, I know the post that I think Emily had initially commented on with this, and it was actually one of the first things for Doctor Who that I saw. Before I even actually started watching Doctor Who, I had seen this YouTube video of this scene from during Matt's run as number 11, and it was when they traveled forward in time with Van Gogh and showed him, this huge gallery of his art that was dedicated to him, and people, talking about, how his art was so wonderful and how it inspired them and how it spoke to them. And he was just so genuinely touched by it. I kind of go through something similar a little bit as a writer, like, because I think any creator does with their art, where it's like, am I really having an impact? Does this really mean anything? Is this really going to count for something? And, the Doctor allowed Van Gogh this moment to see that, yes, his work had impact. His work had a lasting impression on people, and it would endure past him, even, well after he died.
The cool part about that is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Van Gogh was kind of a reclusive nobody when he was alive.
Yeah, so he didn't even, spring on the scene or anything when he was alive. Nothing really popped off for him as far as I'm aware.
Right. So as opposed to those artists who were being, featured in the cathedrals and all this other crazy nonsense, he was just painting to paint, and then it wasn't even found until long after his prime. Van Gogh's the one who cut off his ear too, isn't he?
I believe so, yes.
He was always a little eccentric. Did they address that? Did they say anything about that?
I don't think so, because that happened very late in his life, and so I think they took him before that happened.
So they caught him, if I remember correctly. Yeah. No, I remember how he was crying too during when the art curator was talking about him being the most influential of his time, and it was such a sweet moment.
Yeah. Just to be able to know that, you had an impact, that people still remember you and what you did. you know, it's, I think it's what every artist, no matter what their medium, likes to think about, you know, even if we can't go into the future and see and know for sure, we like to think that our work will survive us in some way.
Yeah. See, I've been watching a lot of those abandoned videos of places that people are going to visit that have been abandoned. And I'm thinking about that constantly now, the concept of existentialism and whether or not we are going to leave enough of an impact to be remembered. It's sort of like a selfish thing to think, okay, well, am I going to do enough? Am I going to take enough pictures? Am I going to make enough of an impact? And there's no way for us to know that, and to think that we could, or that our measly little lives are important enough is really difficult to wrap your head around, though, too. Because, you know, even looking at these abandoned houses, it's hard to believe that we would leave enough of an impact, but we can't be humans and not create art and not be a part of art in some way. Even if you're just appreciating what the other humans around you are doing, I feel like there's a double-edgedness to all of that I don't quite understand, but I want to. But I also am afraid to see, like, the other side of insanity.
Yeah. It's kind of like that Dead Poets Society quote where, you know, he's talking about science and, you know, medicine and things, you know, these are important, you know, these, you know, help us in our lives, but art, that is what is, you know, truly helps us to live. And I still come back to that because, you know, it's kind of like a duality. We have, you know, a logical, like, STEM oriented side, and then we have, you know, a creative side, and it's just, you know, we need both of those sides to live and to really, you know, truly flourish as people.
Right. Well, and I've been bombarded by that kind of thing lately too, with the recent tragedy of losing Kobe Bryant and the other people that were lost in the helicopter crash with him, as well as this. It was very recent too that I was thinking about. Oh, recently I've watched or been listening to a lot of, like, Bach and Beethoven, and so has Aurelia. And it turns out, like, Bach was very, very young when he died. And it's, like, diminishing to be like, well, I'm 34 and I haven't composed any symphonies or concertos in my life, and I'm not going to. So why is my life more important than his when he lived to be less old as I am now? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So it's, like, very strange to think of the importance of life, existentialism, and how important your life is, and wanting to, like, make an impact, make sure that you leave a mark, or at least take enough pictures for someone to know you're here, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Or, you know, write enough stories, or do enough makeups, or whatever it is that your passion is. I know so many different artists, and they all do a different kind of art. And I'm so blessed to be a part of that community. But I also, like, feel so small that we're all doing something amazing to create and to add on to it.
I mean, sometimes, well, I mean, we still need support. Even if you don't, you know, actively make art, support is so important because, I mean, it's all well and good to say, oh, we'll draw and write or, you know, make edits or whatever and do it for you. You know, you shouldn't do it for anybody else. And it's like, yeah, you should be motivated by wanting to do something for yourself. But at the same time, it's really difficult if you don't, you know, get any kind of encouragement. You know, it's like you're just speaking into a void, you know, and that's not even fulfilling as much.
We could take that even down to, like, recording a podcast. Like, there are days where I don't want to talk. And I feel like the moments that make it worth it are very small when, you know, someone says that they listened and, you know, wanted to talk back to us, or, you know, totally understood what we were talking about and felt like they were part of the conversation. Like, those are the moments where I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And I forget that one of the reasons that we are continuing to do this is to have that that medium, to have that voice, and for people to know that like this is a thing that we all also crave, and that it's okay to crave it, and that you're not alone, and we're just as nerdy as you are too.
And that there's nerds in every kind of flavor.
Exactly. I am going to real quick bust into Geek on Fleek. I know this is like way out of order, but I want to make sure I touch on this because it kind of bleeds into the whole concept of the podcast medium and what's going on with the beginning of the year and everything that's happening. So
of course,
I recently applied for a press pass again to C2E2, and it was accepted. So I'm super, super excited because some of you may remember I went to C2E2 last year. I went with Aurelia. We had a great time. We had one day to be there. We arrived pretty late and we spent tons of money and didn't really get to do very many panels or anything. So this year I'm like, I'm going to be on top of the schedule and on top of who I want to see, what panels I want to go to, and what I want to do. And last year we got pictures with David Tennant. So we got to be corralled into all of the other people who had paid whatever amount of money to go get a picture fangirled with David Tennant super quick. We were supposed to also do that with Matt Smith, but he canceled pretty last minute last year. Now, this year, he's supposed to be there again. And I'm torn about what I want to do for the one day that we're going to be at C2E2 because I'm seeing these really cool panels. And what I think is really interesting about the panels is that it really looks like just about anybody can decide they want to do one. Adam Savage is going to be at C2E2 this year for the first time, and he's been to plenty of other conventions. He's known for the cosplays that he creates and walking around at conventions completely incognito, with other like famous people also totally incognito, with really awesome cosplays. And I mean, so he's been to plenty, but this one he's actually going to be doing photo ops and he's actually going to be doing autographs, and he's got a panel on main stage in the middle of the day on Saturday, which is the day I'm going to be there. And I'm super excited, right? But I'm like torn about what to do. Do we try to get pictures with Matt Smith? Is that really something that Aurelia is going to want to do? Are we going to want to spend our time mostly in Artist Alley and on the convention floor, seeing what people have created, what they've done? And this, like, I thought this was a good segue because we were just talking about people who create art. And I love supporting local artists. There are still pictures I have from last year's C2E2 that I haven't framed yet that I still need to get up on the walls. But it's so important to me to support local artists. And I've definitely instilled that in Aurelia too. She's got an entire book series of a local guy we know. I'm friends with him on Facebook. I know that he's not going to be at Anime Milwaukee, and if he's at C2E2, he's only going to be there Friday, which is the one day I'm not going to be there. But it's like super important to me. I've definitely instilled it in Aurelia, so I'm super thrilled about that. But I'm like, okay, how do we make sure that we at least catch a little bit of what Adam Savage has to say? Maybe walk past where Matt Smith is so we can make sure we breathe the same air as him. I don't know. Maybe the talent will be seeping through the air vents or something. And then, you know, I also want to go to the panels where they're having some plus size cosplayers talk about how to make a cosplay plus size, how to be versatile and diverse in all of the different materials that they can use. Using foam and 3D printers and stuff is a big deal right now with cosplay. So it's like, okay, how do I go catch all the things, not bore my daughter to death, and still like catch everything? So I'm super excited, but I'm also like losing my mind as to what I want to make sure that we do. And it's not an issue I ever had before. You know, like I went to conventions when I was Aurelia's age or whatever. And I know I've talked about this several times. You know, I've given tips and, you know, like make sure you do this at a convention. Make sure that if you're in the hotel room, you wear deodorant and drink Emergency and all of that stuff. But this one's really hard for me because we aren't going to stay the night in Chicago. We're going to get there early. We're going to stay there late. We're going to do as much as we can in the period of time that is open to it's closed. And I'm like finally at a point where I can look at all of the panels, decide what I actually want to do, and support like all the artists and, you know, maybe also still wear my Doctor Who jacket, or maybe I'll actually dress up as something this year. Gosh, I've got a boyfriend and a daughter. We could actually do a trio of cosplays if we wanted to. I don't know. I'm just so excited and so like ready to embrace the whole, all my people again.
Just be right in the middle of everything.
Yeah, and that's like really the thing. Like, just I want to watch all the people and take all the pictures and like tell everybody that their cosplays are amazing, and I don't hopefully still be able to like wipe the smile off my face at the end of the day, but only at the end of the day.
Yes.
Okay, so that's all I have for Geek on Fleek.
Right.
Let's talk about.
Let's move on to another fandom, because otherwise we're going to be here like all day.
I could talk forever. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
No. Oh, no, that's fine. I did want to make sure to touch on Avatar the Last Airbender, because that has so many good moments. I'm so about supporting and, talking about really good animation, because, I think it's been mentioned that a lot of people don't really seem to count animation as, like legitimate or something that's not just for kids. And Avatar the Last Airbender definitely, hits a lot of points where, a younger person can watch it and they can, really get something out of it. But then like an adult can watch it and they can get even more out of it. And I think, I think it just does a great job at catering to both without being, overly one or the other. It has like a good balance. And so, like, pretty much, like, the one character that really sticks out to me is Iroh, because he is, he's not even a part of, officially, of Team Avatar, but, like, he's just kind of grandfathered in, I guess, because he has a lot of these really good moments. I mean, he has a lot of funny moments. He has a lot of, moments where he at least tries to, teach Zuko some things, but he's really complex. And as much as, the, front that he puts out of being, kind of, jolly or being helpful, he actually carries a lot of pain with him. And there's one episode in particular where he's in Ba Sing Se and he's, putting together a picnic, and he goes throughout the market and he sees, a little crying child. And so he plays on this little, I don't think it's a mandolin, but it's kind of similar, I think. And, he sings them a little song and makes them laugh. And then he almost gets mugged. And, he basically like tries to teach the mugger how to have a better stance. And then he sits down and makes them a cup of tea and kind of talks with them about life and how, he should invest in something else instead of trying to rob people, and then at the end of the episode, after he's gone through and, helped all these people, he goes out to this, quiet little grove and he lights some incense and, he has this moment to grieve for the loss of his son. And I mean, that moment never fails to not tear me up. It's kind of like Heart of Ice from Batman the Animated Series. I will always cry in those episodes because it's this painfully vulnerable moment for Iroh, experiencing this, this bone deep grief that, he otherwise doesn't really let on to that much. And the only other way I think he really expresses, not deeper feelings, but feelings kind of in that vein is when he reunites with Zuko towards the end of the series, after he's been imprisoned and then breaks free, and after Zuko is, gone back to the Fire Nation and then left again. And Zuko goes to them and he, kneels and he expects, to be lectured or, be told that Iroh was disappointed in him because that's what his father would do, and instead Iroh just embraces him and he tells him, I'm not disappointed in you. I was scared that you lost your way, basically just affirming that, he loves him and he's proud of him no matter what. And that's a moment that I don't think everybody gets with a parent, to have that level of acceptance and that level of love no matter what. And, we get to see it portrayed. It really hits home, I think, at least for me.
Mm-hmm. No, that totally makes sense. And I feel like that's also a thing with several different animations as well. The concept of a lot of fandoms that are able to speak to us because of their content and because of what they're presenting. And I mean, Avatar is no different. It's very much that you can see yourself in a character you don't look anything like. You don't know anyone that's like that character. None of us can, well, not very many people, or no one I know can bend air or water.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, the human aspects of these people make them that much more relatable. Also makes you want to cosplay them.
Yes.
And makes you want to be able to relate to them on those levels as well, because you relate to them in such an emotional way as well, too. And I think that's what's so beautiful about so many of these different mediums for us. We are constantly bombarded by science fiction and elements that aren't part of our daily lives, but the things about these characters that are human and are relatable make you want to be in those places, be on that ship. It makes you fall in love with someone like Wash and Zoe from, Firefly. They make you relate to that on a different level and wanting to relate even more so, if that makes sense.
Oh, no, it totally does. And I think it's really interesting how different series can basically, impart little gems of wisdom to us. Sometimes even if we don't realize we necessarily need them. I was thinking of, all kinds of different moments from different TV series. And while Mean Seasons isn't necessarily like the very first, or even like in my top 5, like Batman the Animated Series episodes that I love, it has a very, very important little message right at the end where it involves, they kind of made an amalgamation of Calendar Man. They changed her to Calendar Girl, and, she's basically lashing out at during all of the different holidays and everything, but she's a former model who, is lashing out because she feels that she's been completely scarred and by the modeling industry and by this one designer in particular. And at the end, when she's caught, they yank off her mask and she's like, "No, don't look at me," and she, screaming, "Don't look at me." And they get a glance at her and she looks pretty much like she did when she was modeling. She hardly looks any different. She's still beautiful. And Batgirl says, "I don't understand. She's beautiful." And Batman just says, "She can't see that anymore. All she sees are the flaws." And it's just like, okay, large size of oof here has been ordered.
Yeah. Yep. I get it.
Yeah. It's different little things like that come through, I think, at different parts in our lives when we need it. And I mean, that's certainly been true of me in certain video games, but I mean, it's really true of any medium. You stumble upon a certain fandom, or you happen to watch a certain episode or a movie or something, and it just sticks out to you more than perhaps it would, before a certain circumstance happened in your life. So it's, these things can be very, helpful, I think, in helping you to kind of maybe overcome something or come to terms with, something. And I don't think we should just necessarily dismiss it just because, it's just a TV series or it's just an animated series. It's not that big of a deal, It can be it can be that big of a deal,
Well, and I feel like I'm coming back to it again, but that's exactly it though. Like these mediums are something that's entertaining to watch, something that relates to people at a certain time in their life that they need it. And it has something to teach as well. I mean, I go back to television shows that I watched when I was little, and, Aurelia is watching Boy Meets World right now. And it was a show that I watched the reruns of over and over and over and over again growing up. But there's a formula to each episode. There's the overarching relationship of the main characters, but then there's also like a little conflict each episode. And each little conflict has something to teach. And those are entertaining, sure, but maybe it's like part of getting older or part of a fantastical imagination. But it's the same thing when you're older. Like, there's still something that these shows are trying to teach us, or that they have to relate to us in some way, shape, or form, whether it's, Game of Thrones and learning betrayal or whatever, versus, really loving a character and then having them ripped out of your hands due to a plot line or a storyline or whatever. What I think is so cool about that is it's like we're being played and we don't even know it. I'm a huge believer that I learn about or of things right before I need to know about or of things. Like, I'll learn in a book what chamber music is right before it's referenced in a television show. That happens all the time to me. But the same goes for elements of like dealing with grief or dealing with a nasty narcissistic relationship or something like that. Whether it's something you're willing to learn or willing to see, outside of yourself, and then also see within yourself. We hardly ever hold mirrors up to what's going on in our lives. We can, diagnose and give advice to strangers. But that's like part of the human condition, like being able to see what's going wrong for other people, but never what's going wrong for us. And that's like also what these shows show us. They also have the opportunity to tell us like, this is a different kind of relationship that people are having. And you can either see it and accept it and broaden your horizons as to what's going on around you, or you can be closed-minded and not understand that these things, although they're different from your own experience, they're also still valid and still important to know exist.
And, it's kind of in a similar vein, it also speaks to, hard decisions that sometimes we as adults have to make. In The Simpsons, there's a certain episode called And Maggie Makes Three. And Lisa asks Homer, where are all the pictures of Maggie in these photo books? There aren't any pictures of her when she was a baby. And it kind of like flashes back and tells the story of before they had Maggie, where Homer paid off all his debts and he got to quit his job at the power plant because he hated it there. And he got to take up this job at this bowling alley, even though it was much less pay, but it was more of a passion of his, and he was happy, and Marge was happy, and, everybody was happy. And then all of a sudden, Marge got pregnant with Maggie, and he realized that, on his current salary, he wasn't going to be able to support another child, so he had to go back groveling to get his job at the power plant back. And
oh my gosh, I think I remember that episode.
Yeah, and Mr. Burns shows him this sign that says, "Don't forget, you're here forever." And at the end of the episode, the question of where Maggie's baby pictures are is kind of answered because you see that sign, but Homer's taken all of her pictures and placed it around the sign so that the sign now reads, "Do it for her." And it's kind of like that. It's that moment where it's like, I really don't want to do this, but I have to do this. And so this is going to be my motivation then,
Oh, that's beautiful. In The Simpsons of old shows.
I know. I can't remember I think that was in the 6th season, if I'm remembering correctly. So, some of the earlier seasons, it had, some really genuinely touching moments. Instead of just being, silly humor. It had some really touching themes and, episodes that dealt with very real things. So it just goes to show that, sometimes shows do evolve over time, and sometimes it's not always for the best, but we'll still have, the older episodes that we can always go back to and remember, even if, even if we don't necessarily, need the message at the first time that we watch it. Maybe we need it when we go back,
Yes, absolutely. All right. Anything else you want to make sure we touch on? I mean, there's so many other moments. But...
I know. I think like one of a big moment. Now, this particular moment is, I don't want to say controversial, but like saying what it is can be controversial because the whole the whole Kirk Uhura kiss in Plato's Stepchildren. Some people will say, well, that was the first interracial kiss in American TV. And then, like, other people will say, well, no, what about I Love Lucy? Or what about all these other things? And it's like, well, whether it was the first or not, it, I think, is probably the most memorable. And, I mean, honestly, it aired the year after Loving versus Virginia, which struck down all state laws that banned interracial marriage. So it's...
Yes.
Star Trek was always at the forefront of dealing with social issues and, issues of race, issues of, culture and things like that. And which also, kind of boggles my mind as to how some certain Trek fans these days are like, oh, let's get politics out of my Star Trek. It's like, politics have always been a part of Star Trek.
Always been in your Star Trek.
It has always been there. From the first series to the most recent series, it's always been there. It's always going to be there. So maybe don't be a fan of it if you don't like that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, and then when you have a show like that spans such a large amount of time, as well as different social and political backgrounds, you've got to like understand art imitates life. It's going to be something that is able to be related to, and gosh, stop me if I sound like a record here, but it's going to be something that is going to be what's happening around you. And that's the same with like Doctor Who. The interracial, interspecies, interplanetary debates are all something that can be minimalized and then brought into a classroom in a college and said, okay, how does this relate to what's going on in our political climate? And I could write a paper. So
I mean, it just kind of, confuses me. It's like, have you really not been paying attention this whole time?
Exactly. If you really think this is the first time this has happened in Star Trek or any other show, you've clearly not been paying attention.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to make sure to talk about?
No, I think that's it. So thank you guys so much for coming to listen to us talk nerdy to you. And if there's any other episode ideas that you guys might want us to cover, just like Emily did, be sure to go ahead and contact us on our social media pages, and we can come up with some ideas and do an episode for you. Because, I mean, this was all based off of one comment that Emily made on a post. So, you can do it too if you want to. So if you have any, things that you might want us to talk about or cover, just go ahead and shoot us a message or give us a comment or something like that. And, we'll go ahead and do that for you. I'm Elisabeth.
Oh, and I'm Lindsay. And thanks for getting nerdy with us today on Beauties and Headcanons.